All right, we're back. So let's cue. Woo! That was not what I wanted. Cut that out, Bo.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
My name is Jolene. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia at the ENT Institute, and you're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Welcome to episode 289 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. Man, that was fast, wasn't it? Did you catch that? We got new listeners going, what kind of what?
Have some more coffee, David.
I know. The Help Me with the podcast. That's how people want their HIPAA program done. Quick.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Get her done.
So I'm David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me, as always, Donna Grindle of CART. How's that?
What's up?
I had to turn my caffeine levels down just a tad. All right. So how you been?
I'm doing good. Just trying to stay at home, laying low, because Georgia's setting records, and all my team is like, you just stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not like I got to go anywhere anyway, so.
One thing I'm starting to like about this whole stay-at-home thing is businesses are starting to cater to doing things for you more so than normal. So
Doing things for you.
yeah, like, you can drive up to grocery stores and, they'll bring the groceries out, put them in a car for you. Some grocery stores are starting to deliver to your house, which I think is fantastic.
Is that new where you live?
It is. I'm in the boonies. So
Okay.
Look.
Don't know if you know this, but we've been doing that for a while, like a year.
look, getting pizza to deliver to my house is not easy. So getting groceries is like, wow. I mean, so it's a new thing for me to experience.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's not been that long ago that Domino's finally started coming all the way to my house. We had to drive to the nearest store to meet them to get our pizza.
So you were the one that was all excited when they would deliver to a place?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'd call up and order pizza. We have more options now, but used to it was basically just Domino's and Papa John's. And you call and give them your address, and they're, oh, we don't deliver that far out. You have to meet us at the beverage warehouse. And I'm like, great. Now I've got to go.
You can get your beer to go with the pizza.
Right. But, here I am ordering pizza on a Friday night, and I'm going to a packed place where a bunch of alcoholics are standing in the parking lot. And I'm, it's like, okay.
And you probably had to get like 4 pizzas with all those kids.
Yeah. Yeah. You just had to hope that the pizza was still there, that somebody did just walk up to the car and go, oh, yeah, that's me. Had that happen before. You get there and you walk up to the car and you see the person clearly looks like they're about to leave. And you're like, what's going on? They're like, oh, I just gave your pizza to somebody else.
Nice.
Great.
All right.
I guess as long as they paid for it, whatever. But anyhow, so yeah, might not be new for you or other people, but for me, getting deliveries of groceries to the house is a new thing, and I'm excited.
Yeah. I remember because I grew up out in the boonies, as you know, and my dad does not get delivery unless my sister delivers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep, totally get it.
Yeah.
It still hadn't gotten out there.
Yeah, we've got some things where like people will not even drive down the driveway. Like you have to meet us at the top of your driveway to get it. We are not coming down that driveway. Because we have trees that go over the driveway, and so some trucks can't come down the driveway. So depending on what it is we get, we can't. We had when we were doing some work over the summer, we had some lumber delivered, and they couldn't get it down the driveway.
Okay, everybody go visit David.
Yeah, if you can find me. So
there you go.
We have a no-fly zone over our house as well.
Really?
No, not really.
Because I'm like, I would think that would be a good idea, knowing you. So I just have to point out that I forgot to put everything on silence in case you forgot as well, David, because I just did it.
I did not. I did not forget. The only thing that's not on silent is my wife, and I have no control over that.
Yeah.
So she doesn't listen.
Heard.
She doesn't listen, so I'm not worried about her.
True that.
Hearing what I just said. But I'm sure some of you will find her on Facebook and send her a message and tell her.
Somebody will.
All right. So in today's episode, we have some OCR enforcement news, and it came at us hard and fast. Like in the past 24 hours, we've got a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
a lot of this is going to be shooting from the hip because we've literally had to put it all together just before recording because it just came out.
Well, and we didn't have a plan anyway, so it works out.
Yeah. I wasn't going to tell anybody that. But anyway.
Well, I confess because,
Because it's your job. You just got one job. All right. Yeah. All right. So the HIPAA boot camp, don't forget, we are still having people sign up and we are having fewer and fewer seats available. So if you're interested in the HIPAA boot camp virtual edition for 2021, we will only do 2 this year. So this is number 1. And it's going to be February 23, 24, and 25. So if you want to sign up for that, better do so quickly.
yeah, we're doing another one in August is currently on the plan. But right now we're still being flexible a little bit because we've learned our lesson. So the HIPAA boot camp.
Yep.com. I like how you look at me. All right, let's get to it. But first, here's a word from our sponsors.
Cybercrime is a multi-billion-dollar industry and growing. How confident are you that your computer network can withstand a cyber attack? Can you afford to take the chance that what you have today will protect you? Call us and find out if the cybersecurity in your business is something you should be concerned about, or if you can rest easy knowing your business is protected. Visit us online at securityfirstit.com. That's securityfirstit.com and schedule a time to talk.
Did you know that 83% of healthcare organizations report a strong negative impact to their bottom line after a data breach? So many doctors think that they're HIPAA compliant and have nothing to worry about. Many of those organizations thought the same thing before it happened to them. Call Cardin today at 678-292-5001 so they can assess your practice and help ensure you are protected and prepared. Visit cardinhq.com to learn more. All right, we're back. Now it's time for the HIPAA
Say what?
segment of the week. Not my DJ voice. All right. So as we are talking this morning, Donna and I are like, wow, something happened with the MD Anderson case. Interesting stuff.
Yesterday, the news came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because the headline was Judge vacates the $4.3 million OCR penalty against MD Anderson over data loss. And I was like, what?
Yeah. So, as always, the headline is not where you need to read.
I know. And I am so terrible about being the headline reader to get my news.
No. Anything that I'm remotely interested in a headline, I got to go read it and then double read it. Because, nerd, I would do that anyway before disinformation was like a standard phrase. The news is, so 2018 is when the MD Anderson case, the resolution was approved by the administrative law judge, and the administrative law judge had this scathing response to MD Anderson. And as you recall, MD Anderson said they were going to continue to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, if anybody has the money, it's them.
Mm-hmm.
They got the pockets. So, well, then all of a sudden we get news that one of the cases had been ruled on by the U.S. Court of Appeals. Yeah. And boy, there's a lot in there, and I haven't had an opportunity, obviously, to read the ruling, which is ultimately what I want, because we just talked about that. But according to this, the bottom line is they challenged multiple things, but the one thing they challenged was the penalty amount. And they said it was just way outside what they were authorized to charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what the ruling got down to. All the other stuff just became noise. Because really that's what the ruling got down to. And there is some other noise in there, though.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that what they were claiming was that the OCR penalty was arbitrary, capricious, and otherwise unlawful. So let's just say they skipped the unlawful part because it is a law that they should do so. But the government said that it would be difficult for HHS to enforce the disclosure rule if it must show that EPHIs was disclosed to a specific individual. Harder still if it must show that EPHI was disclosed outside of the covered entity, all these kind of things. And that's really because a lot of times you don't know how many people or where things go. So we just talked last week with John, who's talking about you don't have to prove harm. So this is going to all start looping back together. Mm-hmm. But the judge says, maybe so, maybe not, but that's precisely the sort of policy argument that HHS could vet in a rulemaking proceeding. It's not an acceptable basis for urging us to transmogrify, which we had to go look up. I mean, come on. We like vocabulary words, but come on.
Yeah, that's a new one. Like I might put that one in my back pocket.
Yeah, no, transmogrify. We even looked up pronunciation. I've lost it. But we looked it up, and we'll give you that in just a second. The regulation HHS wrote into a broader one. So they're saying that they transmogrified what they originally wrote into a much broader one in this case.
Yeah.
So, David, you can tell them when we looked it up, we got a really good definition that you have.
Yeah, transmogrify, which is to transform in a surprising or magical manner. So I'm assuming the use case here was surprising manner, not magical manner.
Yeah.
But just the fact that it could be one or the other, it's either a surprise or it's magical.
Yeah. I like the example of the use it in a sentence on the definition.
Yeah. The cucumbers that were ultimately transmogrified into pickles. Okay.
So OCR is in a pickle.
That's so magical. So there's your word for a week, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you put
that might be the word for 2020 if we can remember it.
Yeah.
2021. Actually, 2020 was that, wasn't it?
It was surprising. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the thing is, and this is a really key element because remember when in April 2019, OCR announced they were changing the way they interpreted the limits on penalties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This case happened before then.
Yeah. Is that the time where we had the show when we were discussing the changes and they had the cap was at 50,000? No, the cap was at 25,000. You would remember because it drove you crazy. You can charge somebody up to 50,000, but the cap was 25,000. So you were like, how can you do that?
Yeah, it's torturing me to this day because nobody's fixed it.
No. Yeah, it's crazy. Like you can do this.
The maximum individual penalty is 50,000, but the annual cap is 25.
Maybe they just give discounts. We're going to charge you $50,000 and give you a $25,000 discount.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was crazy. But according to, let's see, upon further review of the statute by the HHS Office of the General Counsel, HHS has determined that the better reading,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
I always love that. We've read it in a better way. We read it differently.
Mm.
Is the annual limits and this is the 25,000 for no knowledge, although that you can do a 50,000 individual, 100,000 for reasonable cause, 250,000 for corrected willful neglect, and 1.5 million for uncorrected willful neglect.
Right.
And they're going to use this penalty structure with the adjusted inflation, which most people don't realize is actually there,
right,
until further notice.
Yep. So just to say this again, the $1.5 million uncorrected willful neglect cap is not $1.5 million.
If it happens today, it's like almost 2 million, I think.
Yeah. So this is, this is the base, and then they throw in the inflation adjustments on top of that. So we still see people out there saying 1.5 million is the cap. And I'm like, it's not been 1.5 million for at least 3 years.
Yeah, longer than that. But, we're those nerds that are out there really paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
so ultimately, with this new reading of the law applied to 2018, then the judge says that decision, it led to levy the massive fine was arbitrary, capricious, and contrary to law.
Mm-hmm.
And HHS has conceded that it could only defend the fine up to $450,000, which is, 10% of the 4.5 million or whatever, 4.3. But they're now saying 450,000. So the judge said, off with you, go figure it out. And so now they're in, whatever the next step is. It's not like they just tossed the whole case and they didn't get rid of all penalties, which the headline implies. They're saying you got to, as they say in the country, lick that calf again.
So basically we'll be hearing more about this again at some other point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So right now, what we're saying under our HIPAA Says What segment is we don't know what HIPAA says, apparently. Nobody does.
Somebody else don't know it either.
I know. But the part they don't know is all about enforcement, which is really the thing that we keep saying is the least of your concerns.
That's true.
It's reputational damage. It's patient lawsuits. It's ruining your business just to recover. It's expensive. It's all these. That's what we encourage you to worry about.
Yeah. Well,
enforcement is still a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But, patient safety, patient care, all those things are really what you should be concerned about, not, how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah.
If that's your argument is, I think the penalty's too high, then you're completely missing the fact of all the patients' lives you've just impacted in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
But, I guess if I had a $4.5 million bill hanging over my head, I'd be fighting it too.
Yeah, but this is MD Anderson. They're going to pay 4 times that or more fighting it the way they are with all the attorneys and all that stuff. So it's a matter of butting heads in this case is clearly what was going on from the beginning. They're all butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? MD Anderson's got the pockets. The rest of the world doesn't.
Yeah. So
whatever this turns out will impact others and not just MD Anderson. But it's clear that, I'm not surprised that they're fighting it because they made it clear they were going to continue to fight. What I am surprised of is others aren't coming around, but I think that Anthem is so happy that theirs was low compared to what everybody thought. People were up in arms that it was only 16 million with Anthem. So I don't think they want to risk arguing theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't fight it then. So there you have it. That is HIPAA Say What, meaning we don't know what. And it says, but we're not sure how to interpret it. We still are trying to do a better reading.
Yeah, maybe better lighting or a better place, but somehow you need to create a better reading.
Better reading.
Yeah.
A better reading.
I like
That's
that.
what we need to do.
All right, so as we transmogrify this podcast on into the next segment.
Transmogrify.
See how that works?
Yeah.
Another article that, actually really wasn't an article. It was a news flash that came into my inbox. OCR, again, still on a roll with patient right of access. And guess what?
Yep.
14.
Yeah.
Yes.
The 14th one since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them were in 2020. So, wow.
Yep.
They are not playing.
Yep. They hit the ground running for 21. So we may be able to cap the, there's 13 and 20. So maybe we can get more than 13 and 21.
yep, it's possible, but who knows what's going to happen? And, tomorrow it could be a whole different place.
That was transmortifying.
Diddle-dee-dee. We don't know. All right, so this 14th one was Banner Health, which is a huge health system out in the Phoenix area. And, huge. 30 hospitals, basically, if you're in Phoenix, you're using Banner Health somewhere. Mm-hmm. If you're in the Southwest area down there. It is indeed, as they point out, one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States. That's big.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the one though. This was kind of interesting because this, before it's been about, we're going to have, people, it's one patient. We tried to get you to fix it. And then turns out you still haven't fixed it. And then the patient still not getting their stuff. And this goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
This one was a little different because they got 2 complaints. And I think they're all from attorneys, but they got 2 complaints. The first alleged that an individual requested access to her medical records in December 2017 and did not receive them until May 2018. Okay. So they get that complaint, resolved, whatever. And then there's a second complaint that comes in and that they requested access to their records in September 2019 and were not sent until February 2020.
Okay.
So it's not quite the same as the others. First of all, there's multiple complaints coming in. But also, the patients are eventually getting their records, but that 30-day timeline is just being blown out of the water time and time again.
Right.
And, so they go in, they do their investigation, and they're having them update all their policies and procedures. All the caps are the same, and it's $200,000, which is the largest one for protective patient right of access resolutions. So, again, an organization that big, $200,000 compared to $36,000 on a single doctor, not even close to the same impact. But still, the bigger thing is they want them on that corrective action plan, and they got them on it. So that will then, of course, involve making sure that they don't hear any more complaints about this problem. Now, when this proposed change rolls out that says instead of 30 days, you have 15, and they can't make 30, they can't make 60, they can't make 90, right? So it's gonna be a problem, and information blocking and all of that's going to come into play. So that's why they're cracking down on these things, and I do expect it to continue.
Mm-hmm.
We got the new administration coming in. There's all this, but they've been doing so much work that and trying to get people to pay attention. And he said it over and over.
Yep.
And in fact, what was it that he said on this one, David?
Roger said the first resolution of the year signals that our right of access initiative is still going strong and that providers of all sizes need to respect the right of patients to have timely access to their medical records.
True that.
That's what he said.
Yeah, this has been going on for years. They've been pushing and pushing to let patients have their records. And it's who owns the record and all that kind of stuff. So Anyway, that goes right along with it. But then they had a big one. This one's interesting.
Yeah. So the heading on this one is health insurer pays $5.1 million to settle data breach affecting over 9.3 million people. To which my first response was, that's just over 50 cents a piece. That's not too bad.
Well, the other thing is that, so they filed a breach report in 2015. And we always tell people these things can go on for years before they decide what they're going to do. And if you're thinking a resolution, you have a data breach today and you're thinking 6 years from now, I'll settle it, everybody's going to tell you you're crazy. So, but here we are. settling, and here, when they found the breach, so I think this has a lot to do with it. In September 2015, they notify HHS this has occurred. What they notify them of is a breach that began on or before, i.e., this is the first time we're sure it could have been before then, December 23rd, 2013, through all of 2014 to May 2015 is when they then found that they had hackers actively in their network. So that's a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find that in May and they notify in September. Yeah. So they don't seem to be hitting them for that, but I love the explanation that the hackers installed malware and conducted reconnaissance activities that ultimately resulted in the impermissible disclosure of the protected health information, yada, 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 yada. But the hackers installed malware and conducted reconnaissance. We're hearing that like that is today, though that's the way they're doing the attacks today.
Mm-hmm.
That was cutting edge stuff. They were after you in 2013.
Yeah.
Right?
Or before.
Yeah, or before. But it's right after this is when, 2016 is when ransomware really became the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're getting back to doing this and ransomware. And I want more details on what had happened was, but we who'll know if we'll ever get that. Information sharing is one of the things that would make things so much better, but there's a lot of reasons they don't share.
Yeah.
So obviously OCR did an investigation. Would you believe their list of violations? Potential violations.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a violation unless it's what you say, where they admit to a violation of HIPAA and do a civil money penalty. This is not it. This is not what MD Anderson has. This is a resolution agreement.
Right, which most of them go to resolution.
Yeah. And who knows what they offered MD Anderson in a resolution agreement, who they refused. I don't know. I'm sure they, it could have been $450,000 and they refused it. I don't know. But here was the not surprising list of potential violations. You want to guess what number one is? I know you haven't even looked at that page yet. Guess.
I'm sure they didn't do a risk analysis.
The requirement to conduct an accurate and thorough risk analysis of the potential risk and vulnerabilities to confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
All right. So didn't do step one.
You want to guess what number two is?
They did not have a risk management plan in place.
They did not have a plan to reduce risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable, appropriate level.
How about that?
Number three.
They didn't have policies and procedures.
Up close.
Oh.
Number three is they didn't implement procedures, which I thought was interesting because they do say policies and procedures usually.
Mm-hmm. So
it makes me think they had a policy that said they were going to do it. I don't know.
That's all you need.
The requirement.
We said we'd do it. What more do you want?
The requirement to regularly review records of information system activity.
Oh, yeah.
This is the thing, and we need to do an episode about reviewing activity logs.
Can you
we did one a long time ago.
Well, can you define regularly? The funny thing is, people think, well, we'll review these every 6 months or whatever. You have no idea how many logs happen on a daily basis if you think that's going to suffice.
Well, it's better than nothing is all I can say.
Yeah, it is better than nothing. But
How about you go to quarterly? Let's try that. And then when you see what that work involves, you'll slowly work your way. Well, okay, we'll do monthly. Okay, we're going to need some help with this.
Yeah. We need constant review of logs. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you think looking for a needle in a haystack is bad? Anyway.
Well, and you've got multiple logs to worry about. You've got your firewall log, you've got the information in just the network itself and the domain and logging in and failures to log in. And then you have the apps that you use and the activity that's occurring within the app.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, by the time you get to your EHR, it should be showing you. And I know the guys at Sphere have told me before that they had cases where they picked up things that weren't picked up in any of the other reviews. And the group was obviously, if they're doing that one, they're trying to do all of them. They didn't pick it up. It didn't flag anywhere. And it was because somebody had credentials in some of these other areas that didn't get shut down or something like that. But, that EHR is kind of like that last line of defense.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be looking at it too.
Yep.
So this is saying clearly from December to May, you've gone like a year and a half before you catch it. You're probably not monitoring logs. That's what they're saying. And they're claiming that was a potential violation. And then the requirement to implement technical policies and procedures. Policies and procedures for electronic information systems that maintain ePHI to allow access to those persons or software that have been granted access, blah, blah, blah. So it's access controls.
Right. But everybody can have the same username and password, right?
Maybe back then that's where they were still working. I don't know.
Well, I still have IT people that argue this point about as long as the EHR software has individual credentials, the Windows machines don't. I still see that.
I mean, in a small environment, maybe you could still do, maybe. But of any size at all,
yeah,
you can't because there's so many things that could be going on.
Well, I think my argument to that is if it were unreasonable to have your own Windows username and password, I could see that. But I don't see how you could possibly convince anybody that that's unreasonable.
Other than it's inconvenient.
I mean,
that's the only thing.
Even in my own home, everybody has their own username and passwords.
Me too.
If it's a device everybody uses. And honestly, that's for our convenience because if my wife logs in, she wants her own environment with her own links and bookmarks and all this stuff. And so if we can do it at home, then for a business that's protecting or supposed to be protecting PHI, this should be a no-brainer.
Yeah. So you're right. It is an outdated argument.
I like that. We'll go with that.
All right. And then the final bit is the requirement to prevent that unauthorized access. So have the controls and then actually implement them to prevent it. So those were the potential things. So they agree to this $5.1 million settlement and then the corrective action plan that they agree to and the effective date and blah, 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 2-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And that has become like the standard again.
Yeah. I was just about to say every single one we've seen lately is 2 years.
Yeah. And again, at least for what we say, we've all said it takes about 2 years from the time you're going to start and really take this seriously to the time that it's really embedded into what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cultivate it, right? You just kind of water and feed it.
Mm-hmm. Put it in the crock pot.
On a regular basis.
Yeah. Turn the crock pot on low. Let it cook up. Get all that stuff going. Eventually,
I was thinking more of growing plants, but okay.
Yeah. No, I'm getting hungry. That's why. Yeah.
All right. So the corrective action plan is still showing the thing that we started seeing this year that I really like to see is that it is very specific. Instead of before it would say you got to do a proper risk analysis. Well, now they've added language that we've seen, and we talked about it before, where it says you've got to evaluate all of your electronic equipment, data systems, applications controlled, administered, or owned, or any entity that contains, store, transmit, or receive EPHI has to be considered.
That's a BA for those who don't know.
Well, it says or any EHP entity, but this is one. If you go read the definition of the company, it's so confusing. It involves, this is a New York, upstate New York, Western New York company, but then there's, they're like intertwined with stuff in Florida and other places. It's confusing. Anyways. So, this is a BA, you still consider a risk and then you're outsourcing it to a BA is kind of what you're getting at there. And you have to consider all of those things. And then the very important line that is what drives people crazy when we're trying to do it. Prior to conducting the risk analysis, they shall develop a complete inventory of all of its facilities, electronic equipment, data systems, so not just computers that are active on the network, all electronic equipment. This is where people fail the most often, is they don't identify all their facilities. They only do an inventory of what's found on a scan by the IT folks. And they don't include all electronic equipment, all data systems, and applications that contain or store EPHI. That is what you start with. And that's what you do the risk analysis by. So we call that the data collection phase.
So even my Amazon Alexa that's sitting there, that counts.
Yes.
Even my camera system that's connected to my network.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is you've got to decide, does that have PHI on it?
Right.
So you've got to evaluate it. And if it does have PHI on it, then certainly include it. If it doesn't have PHI on it, can it get access to PHI?
So if I'm recording the waiting room or some other area where you're seeing patients, and that's being saved back to that DVR, might be a thing to know.
You should document that you have evaluated that and made a decision, even if it's a decision that you're not going to include it.
10-4.
The reason being, when somebody asks you, say, well, we thought this, and they can say, well, you were wrong, but good for you for thinking.
Yeah. What information did you have that drove you to make this decision?
It's way better than going, I don't know, Earl did it and he retired. So
I don't remember why I made that decision, but apparently it was the wrong one.
It was right, It
was right.
David
at the time.
told me to do it. David Sims told me to do it. David Sims. That's going to be your answer, everybody. David Sims told me to do it.
Yeah. Or the one I like all the time, which was, it was right at the time.
It was a fact-specific determination based on the facts we had at that time.
Yep.
And that's truly the answer you should choose.
It turned out to be wrong, but it was the right one to make at the time.
So, again, that's why you document those decisions. Hey. Mm-hmm. All right, so they do the risk analysis, and then they, get it approved by HHS. They send it in. They have 180 days. That's nice of them. They gave them 180 days of the effective date for turning it in for review, and then have a risk management plan to mitigate the risk and vulnerabilities found in the risk analysis.
Again,
that's why we call risk analysis number. That's the thing that'll sometimes drive me nuts is they'll do this thing over here, risk analysis, and then over here they'll accompany that with a gap analysis of HIPAA. They're not connected. They don't talk about each other. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, again, where there's a gap in how things are done. And then, of course, once it's approved, then they have to implement the risk management plan. They have to develop policies and procedures. And then they include a minimum content that must be included in the policies and procedures. And that directly relates to the areas that they're the most concerned about. So, in all of the caps about the patient right of access, they're requiring policies and procedures about the patient right of access.
Mm-hmm.
You can update others, but at a minimum, you have to do this. So in this case, it is information system activity review for the regular review of audit logs, access reports, security incident tracking reports to monitor and respond to suspicious events. This includes parameters for reviewing systems activity, the frequency of the report, the reviews, and procedures for documenting and reporting results of such reviews. There you go. That's what it's supposed to have in it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is why you read the resolution agreements. You want to know what it's supposed to have? Right there.
Yeah. I mean, they tell you exactly the work that they expect you to have.
Yeah. And so the next one is access control. And access control, including provisions to address access between systems. Hello.
Mm.
That matters too. People don't get it that because I can move stuff from this system to this system, they're talking to each other. There's a conversation going on between systems. There's interfaces. There's data moving around. So when we say, what are your data interfaces? People look at us like, blink, blink, crickets, because nobody's ever asked or thought about that. You've got to ask about these interfaces. Who's worried about that? Are you outsourcing that? Is that included in your EHR, or do you have another vendor? If they're talking to each other, who's responsible for monitoring those logs? Are they expecting you to do it? Because we both know a ton of those contracts expect us to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the access control including provisions to address access between systems such as network or portal segmentation, provisions to limit access to EPHIs to individuals and software programs, again, software programs, granted access rights, and provisions to enhance password management requirements, such as a password age.
Yeah.
So, those two make it pretty clear what should be included. And now we can cross-reference that right into HIPAA and NIST cybersecurity framework. We've got everything we need to make sure that we can say we're best in class, as John says.
Mm-hmm.
At least make that argument.
Yeah.
And, with non-technical people around, who knows about the argument? But there you have it, brother.
Yeah.
Those are the big things. The cap, everything else about the cap's normal with the reporting and implementation and violation reports and all of that. And if you haven't listened to one of our deep dives going through those, by all means, we did one specifically on understanding a cap. So there you have it.
Yeah. So head over to our website. You can get the show notes, and we have a link there to that settlement. So I encourage you to read it. And, and it like I said, gives you all the information you need to understand kind of what OCR is looking for and what they're expecting. And if you can do the risk analysis, you're doing more than most, apparently.
It's been the saying for years, like Severino said. And when they ask him, do you see us, changing the security rule? He's like, I can't get them to do this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the bare minimum. It's the floor. We can't get them to do this right. Why change it?
Yeah. I actually had a similar conversation about something different last week about security. We were looking at bringing it on another piece of security that would help with encryption. And but my comment was, we can't get them to do the encryption they're supposed to be doing now. Why are we going to add another piece to it?
So it was one of those cases where they're throwing money at the problem.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a problem. Let's just do this.
Yeah, we just want to say we're doing it or that we have it. We might not do it, but we want to say we have it. Anyway, that's our show for today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media site, if you even have one anymore. Rate us on our podcasting app and help us spread the word. Remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA, it's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.